All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good afternoon also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and it is a pleasure to be chatting with you guys here from 2023 San Diego Comic-Con. If you guys have been keeping tracks, a lot's been going on this week, and there's still more to come. We are not done yet, so make sure that you stay tuned. But with that out of the way, I want to be able to introduce our guest, which you see in the title. Let me introduce her now. She's been on the show before, multi-talented, bringing her talents as a composer not only on television, on the big screen, but also in animation as well. And of course, the topic that we're going to be talking about today is Gremlins, Secrets of the MOGWAI. It's my pleasure to welcome back Sherri Chung. Let me bring her on. Sherri, hello, hello, hello.
Hey, it's so good to see you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So first and foremost, I know things have been hectic, as I said, all of this week. So how are you doing?
It's been great. I had a really great time at Comic Con. It's always it's a little bit different this year as you've seen. I haven't noticed quite as many people. I know there wasn't a studio representation. There's not no actors at the moment. So, but still like an enthusiastic crowd. The panels that I've done were super packed. So that was awesome. Thanks to everyone who came out to those or who tunes in later.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just hitting the ground, running as I said, I wanted to be able to, talk about, your work with Gremlins. Just to start off, and I mean, we've discussed it, but it's still always fascinating to know, in terms of your process, what that looks like, because I'm sure it's different from, your contemporaries as well. When you're working and bringing that music component to animation, I'm sure that's quite different than any other, medium. So can you talk a bit about that, and maybe the things that are great about it? Maybe, you're provided more time, or maybe you provided less time, based on the timetable that you're given. So, are you able to, go into some depth with that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, as you know, maybe you don't know, but I've worked mainly in live action. So the
Yeah,
idea of doing animation is really awesome. But it's also, as you kind of already mentioned, most of the live action that I've done in terms of episodic, you're given a very, very short amount of time. It's about a week turnaround, for sometimes upwards of 37, 40 minutes of music. But with animation, at least on Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, I've been able to have about like a 4 to 6 week turnaround. But within that time, it does include, not only just like writing the music and getting it approved, but also it having, it goes to like a music preparation process where you have this orchestration and then the actual preparing of the parts. Then it goes to record, then it has to be mixed. So there's a whole added extra step in there. So and I will say that for me, that the music that I've done on this particular show, Gremlins, has just been far more I don't want to say it's an intricate music, but it's fully orchestral. So that can sometimes take me a bit of a longer time than when I'm doing something that's maybe hybrid orchestra and synths, or something that's only synths. um, Maybe for other people, other composers, maybe they write that faster, but for me, I tend to write the orchestral stuff just a little bit slower. It just takes a little bit more time to think through those things. And animation is there's a lot. Sometimes there's a lot more turns, a lot more story points you have to hit. The music just kind of, at least in my experience, has been a little bit more sort of this muscular writing, or and sort of this, the accountability of the score is a little bit different. I won't say it's more important than live action. It's just different. It almost serves, it still serves a storytelling function, but sometimes, when there's no dialogue, but in animation, or there's less dialogue sometimes, or sometimes there's less sort of background noises, and sometimes the music really needs to be there to kind of fill that in and complete the circuit, if you will, of the storytelling. Crap, I think I lost you. I didn't hear that
No, no, no,
last
no.
one.
You're good. You're good. Just slight technical difficulty.
You're
But
back.
continuing on from that, I guess the next question would be, in dealing with a IP, we might as well call it an IP. With as longstanding it is been, as a property with Gremlins and the legacy that's come with that project. Can you talk also about that and still trying to hold true to what people come to know and love about that property, yet still bringing your own flavor to it, so to speak?
Totally, and that's a great question because that's something that I sort of had to navigate at the very beginning. It's like, wow, this is, as you mentioned, this is like everyone knows this. Everyone, and it's not just everyone knows the franchise of Gremlins, but like Gizmo is like a beloved character, so you don't want to mess that up. You don't want to like not give the fans what they want, but you don't want to, you just don't want to like give them something that isn't satisfying, kind of thing. So, I mean, these are just, again, these are characters, or at least one character that so many of us have grown up with. So the idea of not paying homage to that character or to the music of Jerry Goldsmith was certainly something that I made sure I wanted to make sure that I was paying, homage to that. What was really great about this project too, though, is that the creator Z Chan and the showrunner, they were all about doing exactly that. They were all about making sure that we're you know having little nods to the music, or having little nods, even in the writing of it. There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot of things that were happening in the original Gremlins movies, but there's also just a very, very different um, you know spin on it, in terms of like a really, really great big adventure. And so the music really had to depart from anything that we've seen in the Gremlins. If for anything, the story is meant to be a prequel. So if for anything, the story starts and kind of gives us the backstory, going into the original Gremlins movies. So for that reason, they were very, very supportive of me saying, yes, let's use Jerry's theme for Gizmo's lullaby that he sings. For the main title and the end credits, I did an arrangement of Jerry Goldsmith's Gremlin Rag, sort of iconic melody there. But for the rest of it, they were all themes that were new. Um, and that was something that we definitely discussed. It wanted to be new, and sort of within keeping of the Amblin world, if you will, but certainly, they really wanted to be like their own thing, and have their own spin. So that was a really great creative outlet for that.
Terrific, terrific. And in bringing those components, are you able to talk more about perhaps some of the instruments that you utilize in ensuring that perspective, that sound came to fruition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's mainly an orchestral score. So I actually recorded the first season in Budapest. And so it couldn't be done here in town in Los Angeles, but still really, really great, amazing caliber of playing in Hungary, and they really killed it. So I was able to use a big orchestra over there, but the story actually takes place in Shanghai in the 1920s. So there was a push creatively for me to include some of that, some Chinese elements and Asian influence in there, and that sort of cultural specificity, if you will. So in order to do that, I use some bamboo flutes. I use Chinese percussion, Asian percussion, and I also worked with an erhu player. And an erhu, for any of your listeners who are not really sure what an erhu is, it's a two-stringed instrument that is very prevalent in the Chinese culture and Chinese orchestras, and it's kind of akin to our sort of Western violin, if you will. That was those. There's flavors of that. And I wouldn't say in some cases it's more than flavors. In some cases it's just full on. This is what the erhu is doing, and it's sort of this like just more of a like a heavier lean into a Chinese approach, Chinese musical approach. But for the most part, it is an actual orchestral score that I think again ties together a lot of the adventure and a lot of the storytelling with all those Asian influence as well. So kind of keeping us in the decade, keeping us in the country, which is really great because a lot of times sometimes I'm being asked to do an Asian influence on something or a cultural influence on something musically. But, there's always sometimes the assignment is more like, hey, we want to put that influence in there, but we don't really want to lean too far into it. We want to make sure that's there, but we have a modern twist or a modern approach. And those jobs are those projects are also really, really great. This one just had a different scope and a different idea in mind and really gave us opportunity to lean further into the Chinese side of it. And certainly in the writing, in the actual writing of the series, they did that as well. There's a lot of characters that are pulled from the Chinese folklore, villains, even like the Jiangxi, which I think is in episode 5, and the characters in episode 3, Odd Odd. So it's like you're using like Chinese opera. So I mean, it's that they really leaned into it the whole way, from the writing and then to the music. I can't. Hold on, I can't
Muted.
hear
Here we
you
go.
again.
I was gonna say, outside of Gremlins, and speaking further to that, to your, body of work in general, I do recall somebody on the show, you had commented on just the idea of a lot of times when you're working on a given show, just in general as a composer, one challenge that you do come across is just that idea that sometimes things can get stale, and it's just the nature of the job of things can get stale for you of working on something for quite a long time. So have that approach in terms of how you try to dig yourself out of that. Has that changed in that time, or do you feel like you still approach it the same way when you come across that? Because I mean, with some of the other TV shows that you work on, have been being on it for a period of time, and I'm sure it can be that way even on a project that is just that one time that you're doing it, that you can run the danger of that if you're working on it for quite a long time. Sometimes maybe too much time can sometimes be a detriment than something that you could take advantage of.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. I mean, because certainly anybody listening, I wouldn't want anyone to think that I would lose interest in a show, which is not really what you're asking. But it is true, right? It's like when we do something for a while, or become sort of repetitive, it can start to feel, as you said, kind of a little bit stale. And I have to say that I don't necessarily encounter that too much. I think one of the reasons is because, I do work on film as well, but a lot of the episodes that I work on, and those are going to be the longest running things like Riverdale, which is 7
Right, right,
years,
right,
and Blind Spot is
right.
5 years. Yeah, so I will say for those episodic ones, it actually doesn't feel for me like I don't really feel like I fight with that sort of, oh, something's getting old or something. If for anything, because each one of those episodes are kind of like their own little movies. So I don't get very long to work on that movie, on that
Gotcha.
episode. So by the time I'm done with that, when that next episode's coming out, that's a furthering of the storyline. It's always a little bit different. And I've been really fortunate that the projects that I've had as of late, especially, they're just so kind of like rich with just a good story and like even with Riverdale. I mean, it's such a crazy um story, the way that the writers do it in a great way, that it's like I can't imagine anybody really gets bored on that show because they're constantly changing it, and we're constantly being asked to do something in the 90s, or do something in the 50s, or do something noir, or do something super 80s or 80s synth or something like that. And so it's or go really, really horror. And I feel like that keeps it fresh and that keeps it alive. And I think just adding new characters and just really sitting down and kind of frankly, just to get a little bit not heavy but headier about it. I'm super grateful that I can do this for a living. Like just writing music and working on different projects, I think helps me keep all of the juices flowing. It keeps everything alive and makes me feel like, oh yeah, cool, I'm doing this on this one show. And if I'm starting to feel a little bit bored or a little bit stagnating on that project, I just switch to the next one, because there's always I've been fortunate that there's like another one to work on at the same time. So it's a great way to just kind of keep the creativity flowing.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't mean to necessarily that it was getting boring because I know like a lot, any project that you're doing that you are passionate about. But I know sometimes even in working on it, that you can find yourself getting stuck a little bit in terms of, gosh, like,
True.
well, how can I move forward with this sound, or how can I. But yeah, um,
No, it is true, and no, you did, and no, I think everything you're saying. I mean, I think we do fight with it. I definitely fight with it too. I think just more than anything, as of late, sometimes the time crunch actually like fuels the fuels the creativity, and so there's no time to there's no time to stagnate
right,
almost because it's
right, right, right,
gonna go.
right,
Yeah, but
right.
it does happen. It does happen.
All right, so you have Gremlins now. Are you well? And you still have you commenting on Riverdale and all the other projects. Uh, Among all those things, because I mean we were dealing with it this week. And it's a bummer we didn't get to hang out this week, but it's all good. I know. So how do you try to find a way to kind of balance all of that? Because while it's also always great to constantly be busy and to be able to do what you're passionate about. Sometimes you still need to have that work life balance. So, how do you kind of compartmentalize that for yourself?
That's a good question. I'll let you know when I find out. No, but honestly though, I did just kind of get done, or I'm kind of rolling off of a very very busy time, which again I'm hugely grateful for.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
also one of those things where I do think that the balance that you're talking about, how do you strike that? I do think it's important. So whether or not a person can find that balance to strike, I think you really know when it's not balanced. And I think that when you're lacking sleep, when you've got too much stress, when you don't have the time for self-care, let alone just the time to go out and have fun, or like see your friends or go to dinner or watch a movie, that can definitely weigh me down in terms of creativity and always being able to give my best to every single project. So I did just come off of a really long period of work and a really intense period of work. So kind of now, I mean, I'm down to just a couple of projects, which is actually really great. I can really sink my teeth into them. I can take my time, working on them, just into developing sounds or developing themes. And then after that, it's like, I don't know. I wasn't saying, sometimes I work on my own music. I just work on something that's not to picture. So I don't have to like think about the time constraints or the budget constraints or not constraints, but sort of parameters of, okay, this scene really needs this and dictates this. But in this case, I can kind of work more on my own type of music just for myself. So there's that. I go see movies, hang out with friends, do the things. But in terms of being able to balance, it is something I will admit to that I find it a struggle. I find it difficult to do because I get really, I think, and this, well, for anyone who does know this, especially, it's like when you are this sort of this perpetual freelance, like it's just always self-employed, you're freelance and you're always hustling. It's hard to even know, well, when do I need to actually put that away and do something new? And I unfortunately, I think I push myself to a limit, and then I'm like, oh, that was a limit. Okay, now
yeah.
I need to do that.
And sometimes you don't even realize how automatic it is. Like it's just a switch that just goes off in your head. Like, okay, gotta do X, Y, and Z, and then you have to, just like you said, you have to like, kind of like check yourself. Okay, I need to turn this part of my off.
It's so it's so
And
true. It's basically like a car, right? When all the engine lights, when all the lights start coming on, you're like, oh shit, I need to like take the tire light is on, the gas is out, the oil needs to change. Okay, wait a second. So it's like all these alerts are going off, and you're like, okay, wait a second, I need to step back, I need to take a breather. So
but
yeah.
well,
I exercise a lot. I think exercising is for me is a
yes,
really
yeah,
great
I bicycle a
to
lot, so that helps.
yeah.
It allows you to
I
do a lot.
swim. I
Huh?
do like the indoor cycling. I
Oh,
do like the indoor cycling. I don't do
oh,
the outdoor. I'm too scared. I'm too scared to do the outdoor cycling.
yeah, but no, it helps, at least for me. I don't know how it is for other people, but it helps me think. That's why I enjoy bicycle. Like, why do you bicycle so far and do all these trails? That's why.
It's
But
why. Yep.
yes, yeah. But Sherri, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for squeezing in some time. As always, always good to see you. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yes. I'm on Twitter, Sherri underscore Chung. Instagram, we have it up there at Sherri Chung. I'm not. I don't know what Facebook is anymore. um, but yeah, I got a website, www.sherrichung.com, and I don't know. I've got Gremlins out on Max right now. I've got Based on a True Story out on Peacock in about 6 days. And in 6 days, I've got Happiness for Beginners, which is dropping on Netflix, a little rom-com I did with Ellie Kemper and Luke Grimes. And then I think there's a show in the fall, but it's not been announced yet. So I mean the release date is not, I don't know. So sometime in the fall there's a show called Found, and that's coming up. I'm really excited about that. Um, but yeah, so thank you so much, Brandon, for it's always, as you said, it's always a pleasure for you, for me, to meet with you. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to like connect exactly and hang out this week, but
It's all
just I'm
good.
so
It's
grateful
all good. We
for
were
all your.
moving moving trains in the night, so it's all good. It
I
happens. The nature
know.
of Comic Con, right? So
I know. I'm so grateful for all you do. I love movers and shakers. I love what you're doing, and I love being on the show when we can do it. So thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
absolutely. All right, so there you guys have it. Again, I want to thank Sherri for hopping on this episode of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Troy ENT, which you see down below, but you could also find me on Instagram at Brandon Troy _ENT. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there and see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Brandon.